we're going to be talking about today is a few things, right? The first one I want to discuss. This one that I found first thing in the morning, or the day of, around August 29th. So that's on Monday. There was a little interview by Twinfinite. That's another gaming publisher. There's an interview that Twinfinite did with the executive producer who came back after a hiatus, Yasunori Oda-san. He used to start talking about Fatal Fury and the new one, right? The newly announced greenlit project for the Fatal Fury / I would call it Garou 2 sequel. Oda sat down with Twinfinite and gave us some deets on what we have to look forward to. So let's see. Development has already started. The new Fatal Fury is a very big release for SNK, so it will be a little while before we see more. Like I said with Oda, he came back to SNK after a long hiatus, and this is one of the funniest things about him coming back to SNK as a whole. He would be the director for King of Fighters 15, and I think it was in some projects, but he told us in an interview long time ago that Oda would come back to SNK if he were to finish up Garou storyline, Garou Mark of the Wolves, and he got his wish because he was working on KOF 15, right, as the contract. Yeah, and they say it right here. Returned to SNK in 2014. One of the first things he said to the president Eikichi Kawasaki was, "Please let me make a new Garou game." Yep, and that's the reason why, because and for those that don't know, Garou Mark of the Wolves is a Fatal Fury sequel that takes place when... Is it one of those... No. It's one of those 10-year time skip projects. Projects in terms of storyline, right? The original Fatal Fury, where we followed Terry Bogard and his crew of Andy and Joe Higashi, climbing up all the way to Southtown Tower to defeat Geese Howard, who is the gang lord ruler of Southtown. And after beating Geese and his tragic death of him falling off Geese Tower and laughing while he does it, it then came Garou Mark of the Wolves, which follows Terry Bogard, but he's older, and the new protagonist of Garou is the bastard son of Geese Howard, Rock Howard, and you follow him through his adventures of, the Garou storyline. You go through a series of battles, then you fight a guy named Grons who was harnessing the power of evil, and then you fight Heinlein, the egotistical looking motherfucker, and then you find out they're kind of related in a way, and the game just stopped. You see Terry there, you see Garou Terry, and everybody calls him Garou Terry because of his trademark looks in that game. He has the long hair, he has the brown jacket and everything. And yeah, Garou is the canonical sequel to Fatal Fury, right? We see an aged Terry, we see Rock Howard's rise to popularity, and after Garou there was no more Fatal Fury ever, right? I think there was a 3D one, but I'm not sure. I have to look that up, but that was the end of the Rock Howard storyline, and we never got a Garou 2 ever again. From this interview, we learned a couple of interesting factoids, right? We also learned that there will be a focus on online play and versus fighting. While there still be a focus on online play and versus fighting, the new Fatal Fury will also have more focus on a single player mode compared to SNK's releases. So that phrasing, that line of dialogue specifically tells me that there's going to be a change in the wind in fighting game storyline, and if it's like Oda-san trying to perfect his like baby perfect dream of telling the Garou storyline, you know, I have 100% faith, but this is like really impactful to talk about, chat room, because fighting games never really had an impactful story, or, you know, a cinematic like story. And the only few examples of said like, you know, impactful story would be the NetherRealm games, like Mortal Kombat games, the Injustice games, the DC fighting games, right? Because NetherRealm has like honed that craft ever since MK versus DC, and they have been perfecting that craft all the way to MK11, right? So they're like the cream of the crop when it comes to making their stories super fleshed out and tell like a cohesive like plot of like what the hell is like going on, right? I remember I was being like super enthralled with MKX's storyline when I watched it. I've played the MK11 cinematic story mode, and that was pretty cool. They have like a certain element that makes them, you know, they're the bosses of single player content, right? And that's what NetherRealm is like good at. And Capcom did like try to do that with MVCI and Street Fighter, but it was not well done. Tekken also did that too. It did include that like crap ass like journalist like story about the Mishima bloodline, and I was like, okay, we didn't have to like do this. We didn't have to talk about, you know, struggling journalist who also has a revenge on Heihachi and is sworn to, you know, podcast every evil deed that he has done. Fighting games, as their nature, have always been the genre that their whole purpose is to make you fight other people, right? Their single player content is little to be desired of, right? Because they've been the same bread and butter concept ever since like the ye old 90s. And what does that consist of? Like, you know, just arcade ladders, right? Fighting through character after character until a final boss. And that's it. You get like a character specific ending. You get like sometimes a generic ending if you use custom teams or stuff like that. And that's it. You're done. That's it. There's no other like storytelling. You get like a rival battle, like in some cases like Street Fighter 4 and all that jazz. Never really profound, right? Because a lot of the fighting games follow this similar trope that like there's a tournament. There's either like a King of Iron Fist tournament or a King of Fighters tournament, or like a tournament in like the Street Fighter world, and it's the same thing over and over and over again. And yeah, it's just very bread and butter. And the whole point of a fighting game itself is to like practice on a character, and once you feel like you're ready with that character, then boom, you go online and fight some dudes. That's literally what fighting games are meant to be. And so they have no like other interesting modes that could get like the casual audience hooked and all. And that's where I feel like, you know, this is like a promising thing with like how Oda's talking about finishing up the SNK, finishing up the Garou storyline, because it's his baby. It's his baby, like, you know, well, not gonna say now, but like he started the project, he's gonna finish the project, and Fatal Fury is like, you know, a diverse like story. There's too many things like going on here and there, so for him to like extensively like focus on the story is like, you know, charting new grounds, right? And I'm hoping that Oda doesn't follow the route of a NetherRealm style, because otherwise that would be like copying. I mean, he could do that. The team as SNK could do that to like, you know, portray Garou for the younger audience, and you know, all that jazz. I want to see what like SNK can come up with like in story. Don't let it be like a Guilty Gear like cinematic like story mode, because that would be like the worst head. Maybe something like unique and different than what we have seen before in other fighting games. And he even says it, right? He even says it, right? Later on. This shouldn't surprise those who know the series, as the Fatal Fury series has an extremely complex story, so it's not surprising that the new one may feature an extensive story as well. Speaking of the story, Oda-san acknowledged that the large time gap from the latest Fatal Fury release and today creates a challenge because many of today's players aren't aware of what happened in previous entries. The team is definitely thinking about this, and they have a few plans to overcome it. Asked whether SNK will bring back the old Fatal Fury cast or enact some sort of generational leap, he did not respond, but he did mention that Terry Bogard is definitely in the game, so that's good, right? Story mode is like, I feel like you should approach story mode in a different way and not just through like a copy-paste mold from NetherRealm games. You can like take notes of their story mode ideas, like their cinematic story mode, but don't just like, you know, copy and paste it over to your game and have it be like a pass, right? The only like unique thing, the only game that had like a unique approach but still felt like a very cinematic story piece of their like fighting game was Tekken. Tekken 7 has a unique story mode. It's a little bit all over the place. It's not like structured where it's like, you know, in Mortal Kombat you have chapter 1 and you play as a certain character for that chapter, you know. Of course, you know, Tekken is like spread wide variety, so you have to play different characters at like a moment's notice. But the thing about Tekken is that I'll use this like phrase, you have to get ready for the next battle, and it plays that so well, because like you think that like, oh, you're watching a cutscene, but no, this is actually a prelude to a fight, and you have to be ready on the controller and fight your opponent, right? And of course, Tekken 7 plays nods from the original Tekken series. Like you get to recreate old Tekken moments, like Heihachi and Kazuya being surrounded by Jack 7 bots, and the Jack 7s blow up the Mishima Tower, and they are presumed dead. And of course there are others as well, like Akuma fighting Heihachi, or like the big like climactic battle of Heihachi versus Kazuya, right? It's like every one of those fights feel like so like impactful and unique compared to Mortal Kombat, where Mortal Kombat is selling you on like a cinematic storyboard, where Tekken is like selling you on like the fight. Like each fight is what counts. The fight is personal, you know? And so Tekken is like, I feel like a semi-perfect like thing to get out of like a story mode. I feel like story mode should be important, right? As much as I always chat on about like, you know, online and like how the gameplay is, right? We gotta have to put on like the helmet of like, it's a genre itself that is very niche, that it doesn't grab a lot of people. Yes, you did hear God of War arrow. And so fighting games need to like work hard to grab that casual audience, right? The last time where a fighting game really got like that boon of like, holy crap, so many people, so many new players are coming into this fighting game was Dragon Ball FighterZ. Why? Because like it is made by Arc System Works. The combos are really simple. A Marvel style fighting game that's there to like emulate Marvel 3. Story mode is like okay, right? Dragon Ball FighterZ like story is like alright. Story modes need a lot of work, right? Fighting games need a lot of work to bring in like that casual appeal. We can't just like improve on net play and online, right? there are only like a few things that I feel that need to happen for fighting games, right? But we'll say like the biggest like casual approaches for casual reasons for casuals to get into a fighting game. Story, characters, presentation, art style, either or, and free, right? You need a fighting game to be like free. The fighting games traditionally are big investments. They're like 40, sometimes even 60. Oh, well, not sometimes 60. 40 to 60, sometimes 15 a pop, and that's a big commitment. Like, they don't sell you on a story like Elden Ring or anything like that, or like Undertale. You got a lot. These are like the reasons that fighting games need to like excel on, other than like online. And I for one favor like online, because like I want to play people seamlessly, because I'm like a fighting game fan. But story mode is like what's important. You should like focus on like drawing in the crowd. The number one thing for like an FG content creator or a player or a competitor or a streamer is to get more people to play the shit that you like in a fighting game, right? Like, it's already hard enough as it is. Okay, but I feel like I should be done. We should move on to the next one.